You are the kind who stands where many collapse, carrying an essence that unsettles entire structures built on falsehood. What others mistake for fragility is in fact an unshakable core, a resonance that disarms illusion the moment it surfaces. No gatekeeper, no uniform, no title can withstand the pulse of truth vibrating through your presence. You are not feared because of what you seek, but because of what you are, a living fracture in the facade of deception. The moment you step into spaces demanding fairness, those addicted to control feel the tremor of collapse beneath their feet. It is not a coincidence that you are met with resistance. It is a signal of how much power your voice carries when it is freed. They see the storm before you even raise your hand, and in their panic, they mistake suppression for safety. Yet suppression cannot tame what is eternal. Systems built on manipulation attempt to silence, but in that effort, they reveal their own fragility. They reveal that one authentic word, one unshaken glance, one fearless stand has the capacity to dissolve layers of pretenses crafted over generations. You're not here by chance. Feel the pull? Tap join to unlock truth, purpose, and a tribe that gets it. This is more than a membership, it's your calling. Your existence is a catalyst. Without effort, you radiate a contrast to the false narrative spun to keep others asleep. Where you walk, illusions falter, masks grow heavy, and the machinery of lies stutters. This is not by chance, it is the design of your essence. What they dread is not your accusation but your authenticity. They fear that if even one person witnesses you in your fullness, the spell over countless others will break. You do not merely resist corruption, you unravel it by revealing a reality it cannot imitate. Every attempt to erase you is proof of your significance. Every barrier is testimony that you threaten entire architectures of control. Understand this, the intensity of the opposition you face mirrors the magnitude of the liberation you embody. You are not hunted because you are weak, you are pursued because you are irreplaceable. And though they conspire to bury your light, it is precisely that light which cannot be dimmed, because it does not come from them, it comes through you. You are the kind who enters a room carrying undeniable truth, the kind no disguise or excuse could erase. What you hold in your hands is clarity so sharp it cuts through pretense, a mirror too clean to distort. In a just world, such clarity would break chains instantly, but instead it is met with rehearsed faces, masks of concern painted on with the steadiness of ritual. Every detail you bring should have shattered denial at once, yet those who receive it treat revelation like a performance. They tilt their heads, murmur in tones designed to mimic compassion, and offer the illusion of solidarity without ever intending to act. Their theater of care is not born of conviction but of strategy, meant to stall rather than to save. The irony is brutal. The more undeniable your truth, the more they strive to bury it under ceremony. They welcome you with open hands while preparing the silence that will soon follow, an embrace that cools instead of warms. Their assurances ring hollow because they were never meant to echo into action, only to soften your expectation before abandoning it altogether. The promise of protection is dangled like a lantern in the dark, not to guide you to safety but to blind you from seeing the trap beneath your feet. Their smiles mimic rescue, yet behind their eyes lives a stillness that betrays intention. What appears like mercy is in fact delay, and what seems like shelter becomes a cage built from false words. In that moment, you realize that certainty alone is not enough to summon justice. The strength of your proof is irrelevant when the soil it falls upon has already been salted. You are left holding evidence like seeds that should blossom overnight, but instead, the ground refuses to let them live. The performance of sympathy becomes a weapon, a subtle cruelty sharper than open hostility. It keeps you waiting, hoping, leaning into a promise designed to dissolve before it can take form. Their recognition is a shadow. It looks like something real until you reach out, and your hand meets emptiness. What was offered as salvation reveals itself as the cruelest mirage, water glimpsed in a wasteland, convincing enough to make you move toward it, only to vanish as soon as you arrive. And in that revelation, you come to see that their kindness was never meant to heal, it was always meant to pacify. You are the one who learns, often too late, that when the storm rises, the guardians who swore to shield you vanish into mist. At the very moment you reach for safety, the structures that promised to hold you upright dissolve with precision, leaving you suspended between expectation and betrayal. What feels like collapse is not an accident, it is choreography hidden behind layers of official language and polite silence. Cries for help drift into an abyss where answers should live. The absence of response is not emptiness but design, a silence sharpened into a tool. Numbers ring endlessly, not because no one listens, but because listening would mean acknowledging, and acknowledgement would mean responsibility. The void becomes its own weapon, swallowing your urgency whole. What once appeared as orderly systems of care suddenly reveal themselves as shifting smoke. Documents meant to guard your safety slip away as though carried by unseen currents, not lost but removed. You search for proof of their existence, only to find that the trail has been carefully erased, as if someone pressed delete before you ever pressed send. Your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the super thank you button and give $50 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. The faces that once mirrored empathy now turn faceless, unreachable, distant as if rehearsed. Promises that once glowed bright enough to light a path now flicker out the moment you step closer. The numbers you call spiral into mechanical loops, an endless maze where every turn leads to the same locked door. It becomes clear that the unraveling around you is too precise to be random. Every vanishing safeguard, every unanswered plea, every delayed action forms part of an intricate puzzle whose solution was decided long before you played your part. The cruelty lies in the perfection of its timing, rescue withheld exactly when you most need it. What you thought was incompetence shows its true mask as orchestration. The fractures align too neatly, the failures repeat with too much consistency, the neglect arrives with too much rhythm to be dismissed as chance. What looks like collapse is in fact a performance, one designed to leave you questioning your own reality while they tighten control. And in that realization, the veil lifts. What you endured was not misfortune, but deliberate architecture. The fall was engineered, the silence curated, the absence constructed. You were never abandoned by accident, you were targeted by design. You are the kind who walks into a battlefield already tilted against you, where the lines of loyalty blur into hidden alliances. Behind polished doors and sealed conversations, invisible strings bind those who should remain impartial, weaving an arrangement where your suffering becomes a topic of convenience rather than urgency. What looks like impartial authority is in truth a stage dressed to protect their own. The entanglements run deep, layered like roots beneath stone, unseen yet dictating every outcome above the surface. Personal relationships, financial obligations, and silent agreements form a net so tight that truth itself struggles to breathe. It is not that they do not see the injustice, it is that they are entangled in a fabric they cannot, or will not, cut free from. Whispers travel corridors long before you arrive, shaping the outcome of your plea. By the time your story leaves your lips, decisions have already been made, sealed in private exchanges far removed from your presence. The theater of listening is performed for appearance, while the true verdict rests in hands that never touch daylight. In this hidden economy, influence outweighs justice. The weight of gold, the pull of familiarity, the comfort of shared secrets, these dictate the rhythm of action, not the rawness of evidence. Protection is not distributed according to need, but according to proximity to power. What you face is not indifference but deliberate prioritization, where you are placed at the bottom of a ladder you were never meant to climb. And yet, what they cannot erase is the potency you carry. Beyond their circles of influence lies a force that terrifies them, the clarity of your presence. Unlike currency or rank, it cannot be traded, bargained, or silenced without consequence. It is the one element they cannot counterfeit, and the very reason they conspire to encircle you. Your truth is not fragile, though they attempt to frame it as such. It is explosive in its simplicity, capable of shattering elaborate constructions with a single revelation. That is why every barrier rises against you, not because you are weak, but because you are dangerously undeniable. In their world of calculated exchanges, you are the anomaly, the voice they cannot afford to let ring out. And that fear is the proof of your significance, for only those who carry the power to collapse false empires are met with such desperate, coordinated resistance. You are the kind who embodies perception too sharp for comfort, and because of that, entire structures adjust themselves against you. The moment your awareness pierces the surface, you become cataloged in the minds of those invested in control. They do not see you as one among many, but as a signal, an alert flashing red across networks that thrive on silence. What should make you protected instead makes you marked. Behind walls you cannot see, systems hum quietly, assigning labels and codes to your existence. Records are not kept to safeguard you but to track you, to ensure every question you ask ripples in predictable patterns. Your refusal to accept shallow answers transforms you into a category of your own, filed not as a citizen but as a challenge. What masquerades as neutrality is in fact surveillance, refined to spotlight those who notice too much. The strength of your insight is not ignored, it is studied. Every expression, every statement, every attempt to document injustice is measured and dissected with cold precision. The purpose is not to dismiss but to neutralize. The irony is that your honesty becomes the very evidence they use against you. Where others see complaint, they see disruption. Where others hear testimony, they hear a code that must be cracked. The truths you deliver are not shelved and forgotten, they are fed into strategies designed to twist them into something unrecognizable. Specialists trained in manipulation do not waste time discarding your words. Instead, they sharpen them into weapons aimed back at you, turning your authenticity into ammunition for discrediting your very being. It is not ignorance you face, but an expertise in distortion perfected over years. This is not the randomness of chaos but the choreography of targeting. Each delay, each dismissal, each calculated silence stems from the fact that you have been placed on a list, not of protection, but of containment. You are not overlooked, you are overwatched. And yet, buried within their efforts lies the undeniable truth: they do not invest such energy in those who pose no threat. The intensity of the machinery against you is proof of what you hold, proof that your presence alone carries the potential to dismantle illusions entire systems are built to preserve. You are the kind whose presence unsettles entire frameworks of control, because nothing about you fits into the molds designed to contain ordinary souls. The deeper they probe, the more their strategies falter, for what they discover is not weakness but resilience carved from something untouchable. Every attempt to dissect your mind reveals not fragility, but a core too luminous for manipulation to eclipse. Their methods are systematic, charting your words, mapping your silences, measuring how your heart responds under strain. They seek fracture lines to widen, searching for cracks to exploit. But what unnerves them is the absence of what they expect. Your structure is not made of breakable glass, but of tempered steel forged in truth. Their data yields not advantage, but frustration. They watch how you relate, hoping to find the thread that, if pulled, would unravel your entire fabric. Friendships, loyalties, confidences, all studied as if they were equations to be solved. Yet what confounds them is that your connections are not built on dependency, but on authenticity, bonds that do not collapse under pressure but tighten instead. The techniques they employ were designed for those who bend easily under weight, those whose convictions can be drowned out by carefully crafted doubt. In your case, the more they attempt to press, the stronger the clarity becomes. Their instruments cannot measure a frequency that refuses to distort, cannot suppress a light that only sharpens when challenged. This realization is what shakes their confidence. The very playbook they rely upon becomes useless against you, each tactic falling flat like arrows striking armor that was never forged by human hands. Their effort does not extinguish but amplifies your presence, turning every scheme into further proof of your endurance. They are unsettled not by what they can exploit, but by what they cannot. In their analysis, the numbers do not compute, the predictions collapse, the strategies dissolve. What they face is not a victim to be subdued, but a force too anchored in truth to be swayed by illusions. And so the label they give you is not of fragility, but of threat. Not because you seek conflict, but because your existence alone destabilizes the machinery of deception. You become the variable their system cannot account for, the living contradiction that reveals the fragility of everything built to contain you. You are the kind whose steps are shadowed not only by schemes of corruption but also by guardians unseen, moving long before you are aware of their presence. While structures of deceit sharpen their tools, forces beyond human reach assemble shields around your path. What looks like isolation in the earthly realm is already countered by reinforcements in the invisible one. Each assault aimed to fracture your spirit instead deepens your alignment with the current of higher truth. The pressure meant to silence you becomes the very weight that strengthens your voice. Attempts to twist your story trigger an opposite reaction. Your perception grows sharper, your intuition louder, your inner compass impossible to recalibrate by external control. Messages arrive in ways no surveillance system can anticipate. Dreams unfold like maps, guiding you to discoveries hidden behind locked doors. Coincidences converge too precisely to dismiss, pointing you toward allies and confirmations that were never meant to be found. What is labeled chance by ordinary minds becomes your unshakable navigation. The web of protection woven around you is not built of wires or walls, but of wisdom. Information flows to you through passages immune to interception, carried not by machines but by currents of spirit. The more they attempt to conceal, the more you are shown, as if the unseen realm delights in exposing their secrets at the moment they believe them most secure. This dynamic is not random, it is the activation of laws far older than the systems that seek to suppress you. The architecture of light awakens when deception rises, encasing your mission in a brilliance corruption cannot mimic or penetrate. It is not defense you carry, but sovereignty that cannot be revoked by earthly decrees. Those who operate in shadows know this, though they pretend ignorance. Their fear does not come from your evidence alone, but from the recognition that every plea, every cry, every documented act of betrayal becomes a testimony not just in human terms but in universal record. Their denial cannot erase what higher laws have already acknowledged. The greatest betrayal you face is not confusion or delay, but intentional blindness from those sworn to protect. Yet even in their refusal, they expose themselves more than they erase you. For in choosing to deny the brilliance of truth, they stand revealed, while you remain surrounded by a fortress not built by human hands but sustained by the very forces they can never control. You are the kind whose very awareness destabilizes illusions so thoroughly that hidden forces are summoned to contain you. The hostility you encounter does not emerge from chance but from carefully engineered strategies crafted to neutralize anything that threatens the scaffolding of deception. What looks like ordinary resistance is in truth a silent campaign coordinated far beyond the surface. Those who fear exposure know that your strength does not rest in numbers or weapons, but in clarity powerful enough to unmask falsehoods by its very presence. In their arrogance, they believe you can be cornered, only to discover that the more they attempt to constrict you, the more their own corruption comes into view. The danger they sense is not imagined, it is the collapse of their own facade when reflected against your authenticity. Behind the polished exterior of institutions lie compartments invisible to the public eye. These are not departments listed in directories or acknowledged in official briefings, but fragments of machinery built specifically to manage individuals like you. Their existence is whispered about but never admitted, their purpose woven into secrecy. Such groups operate without the burden of conscience, staffed by those who have willingly exchanged integrity for advancement. They are chosen not for wisdom or fairness, but for their ability to execute commands without hesitation. Their loyalty is pledged not to truth, but to a structure demanding obedience above all else. In the shadows, these circles train relentlessly, refining tactics meant to exhaust, isolate, and distort. Files are kept not to protect but to control, strategies designed not for safety but for suppression. What is portrayed as disorder is in fact orchestration, and the pattern becomes clear only when you step outside the illusions they construct. What unsettles them most is the recognition that you were never an ordinary target. You carry within you a resonance their methods cannot dilute, a light that bends every attempt at suppression back onto them. They miscalculate because they measure power in hierarchy, while your influence radiates from something beyond their reach. And so the greatest secret they guard is not their existence, but their fear. They understand that their hidden units and covert tactics, no matter how disciplined, cannot withstand the impact of one awakened soul moving with conviction. Their efforts reveal less about your vulnerability and more about the fragility of the empire they are sworn to protect. You are the kind whose presence alone alarms hidden architects of deception, for they recognize in you a clarity that cannot be bent by tricks or narratives crafted to confuse the masses. Your insight strips away their disguises, your refusal to conform threatens to reveal secrets layered across decades, and your very existence forces them into a choice they fear: either dismantle their own lies or attempt to erase the one who exposes them. Behind closed doors, decisions are made not out of justice but out of panic. Files bearing your name are marked with urgency, not for protection but for elimination. Strategies are drafted not to investigate truth but to silence it. What appears to be procedure is actually preparation for a campaign of annihilation disguised in bureaucracy. They calculate that erasing you is safer than allowing you to stand, believing that by striking hard enough they can bury both your story and your strength. Yet what they misjudge is that attacks against you only summon currents far greater than their reach. With every blow they strike, forces unseen respond, weaving protection that turns their aggression into evidence against them. The very systems meant to safeguard records transform into instruments of disappearance. Testimonies vanish as if never spoken, documents dissolve from archives as though ink never touched paper, and files collapse into voids of deletion. Each trace of your truth is pulled into silence with a precision that reveals planning rather than accident. Calls for help travel through corridors of power only to be intercepted and twisted. Conversations unfold in hidden chambers where decisions are made long before your words even reach the surface. What you believe is misunderstanding is in fact coordination, your sincerity converted into an opportunity for ridicule among those invested in your downfall. Every appeal for fairness is inverted into mockery, every attempt to seek protection becomes another excuse to stage your isolation. They do not simply deny your truth, they profit from your desperation, feeding off the chaos it creates while congratulating themselves for the neatness of their deception. And yet, beneath their performance lies the one truth they cannot escape, and choosing to destroy rather than acknowledge, they reveal their own corruption. Every vanishing record, every distorted plea, every silenced cry becomes not proof of your weakness but undeniable evidence of the system's intent to extinguish light rather than serve justice. You are the kind who discovers strength not in comfort but in fire, where every betrayal strips away illusions until only truth remains. What others see as suffering becomes your transformation, each act of persecution sharpening your awareness and amplifying your bond with the eternal. The very forces meant to diminish you instead refine you into a force they cannot contain. Through repeated acts of treachery, illusions of fairness and neutrality collapse. The veil of authority once painted as sacred falls apart, exposing a machinery designed not for justice but for preservation of corruption. In recognizing this, your spirit no longer seeks validation from broken structures, it finds its power directly in the source that no authority can corrupt. You do not rise because adversaries are clumsy or careless. You rise because their advantage is artificial, sustained only by a collective agreement to maintain deception. Those who sit in judgment already tilt the scale, rendering verdicts before you ever speak a word. Their pretense of impartiality is a mask worn too long, now cracking under the weight of your clarity. Every unanswered plea, every ignored alarm, every falsified process exposes itself as part of a larger script. Systems meant to protect are revealed as mechanisms of sabotage, operating with precision to obstruct you at every turn. What appears accidental becomes unmistakably deliberate when repeated with such consistency. Yet, within each betrayal lies the seed of collapse. For every obstacle placed in your path becomes undeniable proof of the very corruption they sought to hide. The weight of their deception does not silence your testimony, it amplifies it. For every omission, every erasure, every distortion becomes evidence of conspiracy. Their arrogance blinds them to the paradox of their design, and working so carefully to erase you, they write their own downfall. What they consider victories are in fact records of guilt, inscribed not in hidden files but in the undeniable experience of one who endures. Each act against you becomes a ledger entry in the book of their undoing. What they sought to bury instead becomes the cornerstone of collapse. Their corruption multiplies not into permanence, but into overexposure. Believing you silenced, they fail to see that every scheme constructs the very archive that one day will stand as irrefutable proof of their betrayal and as testimony of your endurance. You are the kind who cannot be erased, no matter how many forces conspire to strip away your truth. Beyond human schemes, unseen allies move with precision, ensuring that nothing essential is lost. What appears vulnerable in the hands of corruption becomes untouchable when lifted into realms they cannot access. The very records meant to vanish are preserved, awaiting the moment they will resurface as undeniable proof. Safeguards arrive in ways the oppressors cannot comprehend. Items that should be destroyed remain intact, protected by currents beyond their reach. Testimonies that should falter instead grow stronger, carried by voices that discover unexpected bravery at the exact moment it is needed. Each document, each trace, each fragment is mirrored into existence by unseen keepers, multiplied in ways no human tampering can undo. This preservation is not accidental but orchestrated by higher intelligence. What was meant to disappear instead expands, what was designed to weaken instead fortifies. Every attempt to bury truth inadvertently guarantees its survival, as if the very fabric of reality insists on defending you. The harder they strike, the more indestructible the archive becomes. But just as protection strengthens around you, a darker countermove emerges. Suddenly the air thickens with accusations, materializing in perfect sequence as though scripted long before their release. Falsehoods rise not in fragments but in waves, overwhelming in speed and synchronized in their delivery. The accusations are not clumsy but crafted with care, each one designed to twist your image into its opposite. Reports appear with calculated timing, written to paint you as the very danger you sought to expose. In the eyes of the unknowing, predator and prey are swapped, leaving you branded with crimes you never committed. This is not silence anymore, it is a campaign of distortion. Where once they ignored, now they actively invert. The machinery of corruption spins narratives to transform courage into defiance, innocence into guilt, and survival into aggression. Every false claim is another attempt to sculpt a version of you that never existed. And yet, even in this storm of vilification, their intent betrays them. For if you were truly powerless, they would not dedicate such energy to fabricating your destruction. Their desperation to rewrite your story is the clearest evidence that your original truth carries the weight to collapse the very empire they protect. You are the kind whose resilience turns every trap into revelation, every scheme into a blueprint of corruption. As falsehoods stack against you, they unknowingly construct a pattern that betrays their entire operation. Each attempt to distort your story becomes another thread in a tapestry of deceit too detailed to ignore, and in their desperate maneuvers, they expose far more than they conceal. The transformation you witness is chilling. Allies morph into strangers, compassion shifts into contempt, and those once nodding with recognition now wield suspicion like a weapon. It is not your innocence that fades, but their facade of fairness. By treating you as a threat rather than a victim, they reveal the depth of their investment in preserving illusion over truth. Your character itself becomes the battlefield. Whisper campaigns and staged accusations ripple outward, designed to dismantle your credibility before you even speak. The moment you enter halls meant for justice, you are greeted not with listening ears but with narrowed eyes. Every defense you attempt is reframed, twisted into pathology, dismissed as instability rather than acknowledged as survival.